Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, The Tipping Point for Federal Shared Services, sponsored by Ernst & Young on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are Roberta Moreau, a principal in the government and public sector practice for Ernst & Young, Cindy Gallagher, a senior vice president for global business services at Discovery Communications, Mark Glorioso, the executive director of NASA's Shared Services Center, Matt Miller, the assistant commissioner for fiscal accounting at the Bureau of Fiscal Service in the Treasury Department, and Mark Rieger, the deputy controller in the Office of Management and Budget. Before that break, I know we were just getting into it, and I'm sorry we had to jump out. But Matt, you wanted to come in because I asked you and Mark a question, and Mark took all your time. So let's start with Matt on this one. The demand side of this is challenging. So talk a little bit about what you guys are seeing and dealing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, just following up on what Mark said about tie to mission. Especially as it relates to kind of core central accounting and financial management, that very much is part of Treasury's mission. And so the improving financial management as well as shared services has actually been baked into our Bureau's mission statement, which absolutely is a help in terms of that top-level support. On to the topic of the customer demand, I think that demand has to be evaluated, and you have to look where you think the best opportunity as a provider is going to be for success. And so the tagline or the mantra that we're always looking to evaluate and kind of the recipe for success is adopt standard, improve standard. So if the potential consumer or customer is truly coming with that executive level support all the way down through their organization with this mindset of I am going to modify my practices, and to the maximum extent possible, I'm going to adopt what the standard solution is. If they approach the migration with that mindset, but the other side of the equation is the provider has to come to the table knowing that I'm going to learn something and I'm going to have an opportunity to improve my standard and improve my business and best practice processes through each implementation. Then you've got a winning recipe. If you've got the mindset of adopt standard, improve standard, then I think that goes a long ways to success.
You know, that's a great point because we've seen some challenges with the shared services sector recently. And in fact, I think your boss, and I think Mark Rieger was there too, Dave Liebrich, thank you, scolded me for saying there's never been a successful shared services move. And he pointed to, I think, your work with HUD. And we debated on that, and I said, fair enough, Dave. I knew not to argue with a bigwig like that. So, but that shows that when you both have a level, what are our standards, things can happen.
Yeah, and so on HUD, so HUD remains the first CFO-act agency or cabinet level agency to migrate to a federal provider. And yes, there's audit reports out there that talks about there's bumps in the road and lessons learned and still ongoing data quality improvements to be made. What large-scale initiative doesn't have some of those things? But those same audit reports point to a strong success story that HUD has. That effort was large. It was 3 years and $68 million. Nothing to sneeze at, but you compare that to those same audit reports that chronicle HUD's previous efforts internally, almost 2 decades, $275 million, and no successful modernization. Right. Not only that, those audit reports also give credit to HUD for improving the processes, and in fact even I think shed some light or give some credit to the partnership with the shared service provider helping to even surface or bring light on some areas for opportunity. So I think there's absolutely a positive value proposition even with HUD, and we think that is repeatable for other agencies that size and scale.
Mark Rieger, jump in.
So I think there's 2 lessons here, right? One is that it isn't just about the software. Roberta brought this up, but in HUD's case specifically, it was about the skill sets. HUD was suffering from individuals leaving the agency, and they had a real lack of enough people in skilled categories to help do the accounting activities. And so when they contracted with ARC to do their shared service, it wasn't just about the software. It was really about can ARC and HUD get together and do accounting better as one entity as opposed to 2. And it has very much worked. What the other Mark has said a couple times here too is vastly important is in order for an agency to really do this well, you have to have that agency in the right place. Remember, our agencies a lot of times are made up of lots of individual entities, many of which have their own accounting activities, which are as different as our agencies are. And so having some consolidation inside an agency, so as they start to look for that shared service provider, they can represent their agency one time, and they've actually gone through their business processes. They've made them consistent inside is very helpful. And third, Jason, just as long as I'm running the mic, is people. you really have to do a long-term personnel plan on this kind of activity. You need to figure out who's contractors, who's staff, what staff you're going to need at the end of the process, how you're going to get through the process, and how you're going to help those people into other jobs. Right now, lots of agencies are challenged for staffs in a lot of areas. We could really use some repurposing of some of the accounting staff or the administrative staff in the agency activities. So we could do a long-term staff plan that would really help.
Roberta, jump in.
So I think Matt and Mark bring two critical points to when anyone is looking at a shared services. One is the upfront assessment and making sure that you get beyond the SLAs, but have a true partnership discussion of what's really important to your agency and really understand what are the benefits I'm seeking, what is the reason I'm going to this shared services provider, and can I partner with them? Can I look them in the eye and feel comfortable that after this massive investment we're going to make together, that we're going to be able to solve problems going forward? And then absolutely the understanding what are you going to look like in the end, paying attention to your HR strategy and your talent management and planning for that so that when you've completed that, both organizations are running smoothly.
Cindy, let me bring in Cindy because I want the private sector perspective. You're hearing kind of how do we, what's the path to get to shared services? You guys are in shared services. How did things change on your side, meaning the people and the process?
Yeah, so this conversation has me thinking about two things. One is how we got there, and then the second thing is the next phase of disruption, which remind me, we'll get into that phase. But how we get there, we're actually not too different than what the folks around the table are describing, right? Discovery Communication, I have multiple brands, multiple countries that I need to support. When we first started to look at shared services and global business services, they were very fragmented. Silos up, each one wanted their own accounting system, each one wanted their own finance organization, right? Their own IT structure. And so we had to convince all of our brands, TLC, Animal Planet, you can name all of them, that coming to a central organization whose mission was to unlock the future for particularly finance and embracing the curiosity within Discovery, the curiosity of all of our talent, could help them further their own strategic missions. And we had to go through a very robust marketing phase to do just that. And to do just what you all have done or are trying to do within the U.S. federal government.
It's fascinating. It always comes back to the change management, right?
Absolutely.
And we'll get down there in a second. And I would love the disruption piece, so let's hold on. But Mark, you want to jump in about NASA?
I just really wanted to say that what Mark said about the commonality, it was, I believe, NASA moving to SAP, a centralized system, that enabled us to go and do shared services.
Let me dig into that a second. So you're saying previously NASA maybe had 2, 3, 4 financial systems,
Yes.
or maybe it was 5 SAPs, but one was on 10.1 and one was on 10.2. But by saying we're only going to be on, and you pick SAP 10.5 or whatever it is, that's allowed you to move down that path.
I
Do I have that
personally
right?
believe that's really what helped us to move that next step.
Yeah. Matt, do you have the same issue? Meaning you guys were set up in a different way than maybe the NASA was, but you also provide the shared service for all of Treasury.
Not all of Treasury, the vast majority of Treasury, and then a
IRS
lot
is
of
that outlier,
yeah, and yeah, absolutely. But a lot of, in fact, we have more entities outside Treasury that we service than inside Treasury. But it is all about, I mean, Mark's point is absolutely right, especially for these largest of the large agencies, as they're evaluating the future landscape, things that they can do to internally standardize will better position them for a future migration. But to Mark's point as well, all of our customers are serviced on a shared system environment. So it's the same version, it's the same baseline, it's hosted in the same cloud provider. That makes our ongoing operations and improvements so much easier.
And hopefully limited customization.
Right.
Mark Rieger.
So let me just add a little bit to that, because both these guys have told you about the system side of this activity one more time. And while that's incredibly difficult, that may have been the easiest nut to crack in this, right? And so as we think past those systems and start to think about the other things that are costs in mission support functions, we have to really focus on how you do that reorganization thought process, that centralization thought process across all your activities. And Cindy, if I can pick on you for a second, when Discovery did this, they really had a great thought process. One of the things she's brought up before is, how do you pay for this? And in fact, I love the line that you used at a partnership event that said, in fact, it's our business to do this. This is what we're being paid to do. We're being paid to be the administrative arm of our agencies. Our responsibility is to direct resources to the programmatic activity. And so making the mission support functions as efficient as we can possibly do is what we should be about.
And actually, that's a great segue to Roberta. During the break, one of the things that you wanted to talk about, obviously, was what can be done, right? How do we move the ball forward? We've been running a little bit of mud on shared services. I know maybe Mark and Matt would disagree with me on it, but for a little while, what can we do to kind of get the ball going a little faster?
Well, I think one of the things, and the government is starting to do this pretty well, is doing pilots of innovation. I think, as Mark mentioned, I mean, all of the agencies have put in shared services to the reform plans. The demand in the market is just going to explode, and the need and the supply isn't there. So what are the things that we could try? We could pilot, as Mark was talking about, a standalone, full stack, global business services within the federal government. Allow an agency to offload their shared services operations, allow it to just focus on being efficient and effective and providing those high-performing services. We can look at public-private partnership. How might we bring in industry to help set up some innovation centers? We could look at centers of excellence. So, the next evolution in shared services is the back office, but then it's also moving towards what are those high-value services? What are the differentiated specialty services that could be provided? And can you use centers of excellence? And I think piloting different things, testing them out, see how they work moving forward is the next step.
And Matt, did you want to jump in on the previous one, or?
I just wanted to follow up on what Roberta said about the public-private partnership. And as a provider, we try to figure out, where do our federal resources provide the most value, and we think that's on the kind of the core financial management expertise. But there's plenty of opportunities, and we partner with the private sector, not just to provide the software, but all the infrastructure support, integrator support, and a host of other things like that. So I think the value proposition of the public-private partnership is definitely there.
And I chime in one more time, Jason, because I think Roberta hit it on the head, but I would offer that there are a lot of examples, a lot of pilots underway. Between these two shared service managers, they're piloting their relationship workforce, right? How many employees do you need? When is it best to have contractors? What can contractors do for you that can ramp up and come down that employees can't do? What stability do you bring by having a workforce that is made up more of federal employees who stay longer and maintain knowledge? By the same token, you're aware of the Section 2, Section 5 pilots that came out of the Data Act, where we've learned really valuable lessons about data. And we are moving a lot more towards data management. So to aid grantees and people looking for grants, or people who have to file those myriad of reports associated with grants, how can we help them by providing electronic ways of collecting those record items, those data elements, and then allow all of us to assess those elements rather than have a myriad of reports that are difficult to compare. So lots of pilots.
I want to bring in Cindy as well on this, because you mentioned disruption and what's coming next. And I think that the piloting concept will take us down that path of, okay, what's the disruptor? So talk a little bit about what you're seeing or what you're planning to disrupt at Discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we see in the next generation of shared services is shared services can become more of a workforce management operation, right? Not just the people. We've talked a little bit about the people, the talent development, where are we taking our people, but we also have to pull into that the digital labor opportunities. And that's what we're looking at Discovery. How do we blend those two operations and opportunities together, and how to create a bigger opportunity for Discovery Communications using digital labor to truly disrupt the way in which we do work today, and how do we retrain our workforce to be bot controllers, right? Robot controllers. How do we retrain them to focus more on the customer experience versus the transactions that they've been used to processing over so many years. And we get to a point where we look at, over decades of commercial sector shared services, outsourcing has certainly been a big word, right, and a big opportunity. It's no longer the word of the day. Robots, RPA, is the word of the day.
And I'm glad you defined digital labor, because I was going to ask you what that meant, but I was at a recent shared services event, and I know OFIT, Financial Innovation Transformation. Do I get that right?
Innovation and transformation.
There you go. John Hill talked about some pilots, and Matt, I'm not sure, I'll put you on the spot, I'm not sure you're familiar, but he talked about blockchain, he talked about robotics, fascinating stuff they're working on. I don't know if you're able to talk a little bit about that, or is that a Mark thing?
I can chime in, and Mark can as well. But yeah, FIT's looking to be an incubator of a lot of different innovative ideas. Robotics, blockchain are a couple of those. I think the blockchain might be a little farther out there. I think the RPA and the robotics is right here upon us. And I know NASA's kind of been a leader in that front, and we're looking to learn there. And so we're actively involved with FIT in trying to pilot several of our processes and see where might there be some opportunities for bots and to drive out some cost efficiency in the transaction processing world.
Roberta, jump in.
So we're seeing a lot of federal agencies interested in RPA. In fact, one of our clients we've just completed, it's something you do very quickly, a 6-week proof of value, show you can actually use RPA within their processes, and now over the next 3 to 4 months, we're going to help them implement 2 bots in their financial processes. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg of what they're able to do. And it's something that can be done quickly, implemented, and see 60–70% savings within a 6-month time frame.
And let me just define RPA, define the acronym, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Robotics Process Automation.
There you go, okay. Thank you, just in case. Go ahead, Mark Rieger.
And there's a thought that comes up as this comes around, and we're piloting things too, and FIT has provided a number of opportunities that everybody's going to want to pursue, but is it a time changer? Is it allow us to jump steps? As you come from our distributed model to a shared service model, you do have to process through the pain. But some of these new techniques, robotics, some other transactions, actually allow you to save some time in that whole process. And so there is consideration of, if we adopted a philosophy more around data, does that shove the agenda along even faster? And so lots of this is being talked about, and pilots going on now too.
All right. I know, Cindy, you want to jump in, but we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you'll get us started. You're listening to the panel discussion, The Tipping Point for Federal Shared Services, sponsored by Ernst & Young, on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.